XFO Intelligence podcast. Today, we're diving into a pivotal moment in U.S.-China relations, the Beijing Summit, happening on May 14th and 15th, 2026. This is XFO Intelligence with deep augmented thinking, and we're glad you're here on May 12th, 2026. Now, if you enjoy these insights, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. We also encourage you to email us at xfointelligence.gmail.com with feedback or to request more information about our new Thought Leadership on Demand service. Let's dig into today's topic, the Beijing Summit and why it marks a strategic inflection point in the world's most consequential bilateral relationship. President Donald Trump's state visit to Beijing is arriving at a moment of profound complexity. The relationship between the United States and China is not about resolving fundamental disagreements. It's about establishing predictable frameworks for managing enduring competition. What we're likely to see is a modest agreement, an extension of the trade truce, new agricultural and energy purchase commitments, and the establishment of working-level mechanisms for ongoing dialogue. But don't expect deep tensions over technology, Taiwan, or regional security to be resolved here. Let's break this down from a strategic perspective. Success at this summit won't be measured by transformative breakthroughs. It's about avoiding escalation, creating transparent verification mechanisms, and preserving strategic optionality over a multi-decade horizon. One of the biggest challenges they'll face isn't in the negotiation room, it's in implementing the deals. History shows us that announced agreements often stumble during delivery. So, embedding accountability mechanisms will be far more valuable than ambitious declarations. Now, let's unpack the strategic landscape, the constraints and opportunities both sides are facing. Geographic realities shape strategic choices. The U.S., with its oceanic buffers, still depends on global supply chains. China, facing the Malacca Dilemma, relies on vulnerable sea lanes for its energy imports. These constraints push them toward managed engagement. Total decoupling would be extremely costly, while full integration would require political concessions neither is ready to make. Agreements on critical minerals, energy, and agriculture aren't just about trade. They're addressing fundamental vulnerabilities imposed by geography. Next, power dynamics and security dilemmas define the relationship. Defensive measures by one side look offensive to the other. Technological advancements trigger countermeasures. Trust is scarce. Verification essential. That's why procedural outcomes, like transparent metrics for commitments and regular review mechanisms, may be the most valuable results. They provide incremental confidence without requiring either side to surrender core strategic positions. Historical precedents offer guidance too. U.S.-China summits have often seen ambitious announcements followed by implementation gaps, then recalibration. Think of the 1972 Shanghai Communique. It didn't resolve differences, but it established frameworks to manage them. Ambiguity can be constructive because it allows both sides to claim success while avoided irreversible commitments. Cultural differences matter too. Americans tend to prioritize immediate measurable results, while China values long-term strategic patience and the idea of face. Public messaging should highlight cooperation and shared challenges, like climate and economic stability, while the tough negotiations happen privately. So, what's on the U.S. agenda? The top priority is economic deliverables, concrete, measurable commitments that play well domestically. We're talking about a multi-year deal for China to buy around 25 million metric tons of U.S. soybeans each year, plus expanded access for poultry, beef, and more. Then there's energy. Think big purchases of U.S. coal, oil, natural gas, and potentially 500 Boeing aircraft. There's also a plan to set up a bilateral board of trade to monitor implementation, spot friction early, and move beyond the gaps that have derailed past agreements. Strategically, the U.S. wants to contain competition in critical areas like access to rare earths, protecting technology controls, and maintaining regional security commitments on Taiwan, all while keeping some channels open for cooperation on things like financial stability and climate-resilient agriculture. From Beijing's perspective, domestic economic stability is key. They're managing property sector adjustments, demographic pressures, and a shift toward higher-value industries. They need U.S. markets open for their manufactured goods and stable supplies of food and energy. On technology, China seeks autonomy, but doesn't want complete isolation that could slow innovation. And then there's Taiwan. It's Beijing's red line. Any perception of a shift in U.S. policy could quickly undermine progress. So, what's the likely outcome? A modest agreement is the most probable. An extended trade truce, specific purchase commitments, and that board of trade to track and review. President Xi's planned reciprocal visit to Washington later in the year will likely be confirmed. Harder issues will be deferred to established diplomatic channels. This is a win that avoids escalation and buys time. Of course, there are alternative scenarios. We could see a managed stalemate, engagement without concrete deliverables, if an unexpected crisis pops up. Less probable but possible is escalation, open disagreements, and new restrictions. On the other hand, unexpected progress could emerge, maybe an agreement on technology guardrails or joint crisis management if conditions line up. There are real risks that could derail this summit. A Taiwan miscalculation, if misread, could trigger rapid escalation. A sudden Iranian conflict flare-up could distract attention. Domestic nationalist backlash could complicate implementation. And if the technology decoupling accelerates, think new export controls announced mid-summit, it could trigger retaliation. This all fits into a broader pattern, the interdependence securitization cycle. Economic dependence creates vulnerabilities, which lead to security measures, which create friction, and then negotiated adjustments. The system adapts. Corporate supply chains reroute, financial transactions find alternatives. Both sides respond differently. The US reacts to short-term signals, while China plays a longer game. And there are amplifiers, third countries like Mexico or Southeast Asia, that absorb and redirect economic flows. Beyond this summit, policymakers, businesses, and investors should think in terms of long-term resilience. For policymakers, it's about embedding verification, pre-negotiating crisis protocols, and being prepared for friction. For businesses, it's about multi-speed engagement. Agriculture might stabilize, while tech remains volatile. It's about supply chain redundancy, reading long-term signals, and hedging exposure through third-country investments. Investors should anticipate volatility clustering around diplomatic news, and remember that some sectors will diverge in how they respond. Look at companies with operations in buffer zones as potential hedges. In closing, think like a custodian. This isn't about winning, it's about managing competition. It's about designing systems that are resilient enough to prevent catastrophic failure. Does the outcome create predictable frameworks? Does it keep the dialogue going amid competition? Does it build in room for adaptation when shocks occur? That's the real measure of success. Thanks for listening to the XFO Intelligence podcast. If you found this insightful, remember to like, share, and subscribe. We'd love to hear your feedback, or if you'd like more information on our thought leadership on demand, drop us an email at xfointelligence@gmail.com. Until next time, stay informed and stay ahead.